Hi everyone! In today's video, I'm going to show you 5 creamy soup recipes that I consider classics. Cream of broccoli soup, tomato soup, cream of cauliflower soup, cream of mushroom soup, and butternut squash soup. All these recipes are plant-based, grain-free, and 3 of them are also nut-free. I'm happy to partner with Vitamix on this video because having a high-speed blender makes all the difference in how smooth and creamy the soups are. First up is cream of broccoli soup. To make up for the lack of dairy in this recipe, I'm using cashews. Add the cashews ideally soaked into a high-speed blender, cover them with water, and blend until completely smooth. Set half of the cashew cream aside and leave the rest in the blender. Next, chop up an onion and a few cloves of garlic. Sauté the aromatics over medium heat until translucent. While the aromatics are sautéing, cut the broccoli into florets. Add the florets into the saucepan with the aromatics, cover everything with vegetable broth, and let the broccoli simmer for a minute or two. Don't cook the broccoli for too long so it maintains its bright green color and doesn't release too many sulfur-containing compounds. Transfer the broccoli into the blender with the cashew cream, add half an avocado, fresh parsley, lemon juice, nutritional yeast, salt, and blend on high until smooth. Swirl some of the set-aside cashew cream into the soup, and that's it for the first recipe. The second recipe is for roasted red pepper tomato soup. To make the soup, start by cutting away the core from the bell pepper and slicing the tomatoes in half. Lay the vegetables together with an onion and a few cloves of garlic on a baking sheet or a pan. Sprinkle them with black pepper and salt. You can also drizzle the vegetables with olive oil if you'd like and roast them at 400 degrees Fahrenheit until the vegetables are soft and slightly charred on top. Because this is such a high heat, either use unpeeled garlic cloves or take the garlic out of the oven after a few minutes of roasting so it doesn't burn. While the bell peppers and tomatoes are still hot, transfer them onto a plate, cover them with a bowl, let them steam for a few minutes, and then peel the charred skin. Transfer the tomatoes, bell peppers, onions, and garlic into a high-speed blender together with fresh basil leaves, tomato paste, and vegetable broth. Blend on high until completely smooth. Garnish the soup with a sprinkle of black pepper or some fresh basil leaves, and that's it for the second recipe. The third recipe is for cream of cauliflower soup. Start by cutting the cauliflower into florets. You can either cut the whole cauliflower into quarters and then into individual florets, or just separate the cauliflower into florets right away by cutting around the tough stem. Transfer the cauliflower onto a baking sheet or a pan, sprinkle it with black pepper and salt, drizzle it with olive oil if you'd like, and roast it at 425 degrees Fahrenheit until caramelized on the edges. I had to use 2 pans because I couldn't fit all the cauliflower on just one. I'm also roasting an onion with a few cloves of garlic. Again, either watch the garlic or use unpeeled garlic cloves so the garlic doesn't burn. When the vegetables are done roasting, transfer them into a high-speed blender. You might want to set aside a few cauliflower florets for garnish. Since there's no dairy in this soup, I'm using cashews. You could omit the cashews, but then you would need to use some other type of fat. This is because if there's not enough starch or fat content in the soup compared to the amount of liquid, the soup can separate later on. Next is cumin, lemon juice, salt, and vegetable broth. Blend on high until smooth. Garnish the soup with a few of the set-aside cauliflower florets, and that's it for the third recipe. The fourth recipe is for cream of mushroom soup, which I have shared on my channel in the past. It essentially builds on the cream of cauliflower soup because the base consists of cauliflower. But since this is cream of mushroom soup, I'm going to start by sauteing the mushrooms. So chop up an onion with a few cloves of garlic and saute the aromatics over medium heat until translucent. While the aromatics are sauteing, chop up the mushrooms. You can use any mushrooms you like. Here I'm using white button mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, and shiitake mushrooms. Add the mushrooms into the saucepan with the aromatics, add a little bit of thyme, salt, and saute until the mushrooms have reduced in size and most of the liquid has evaporated. While the mushrooms are sauteing, cut the cauliflower into florets. Add a little bit of vegetable broth, plant milk, and cook the cauliflower until tender. Transfer the cooked cauliflower with all the liquid into a high-speed blender and then add nutritional yeast, some type of acid. You can use white wine, apple cider vinegar, or lemon juice, and salt. Blend on high until smooth. Transfer the pureed cauliflower into the saucepan with the sauteed mushrooms and mix to combine. What I like to do when I don't forget is add some of the sauteed mushrooms into the blender with the cauliflower and blend the mushrooms in to get even more pronounced mushroom flavor. You can top this soup with more sauteed mushrooms or fresh thyme, and that's it. The final recipe is for butternut squash soup. First things first, cut the squash in half and scoop out the seeds. Don't throw away the seeds though, you can roast them in the oven and use them as a topping for this soup. Sprinkle the squash with salt, drizzle it with just enough olive oil to lightly coat the inside, and turn the squash cut side down onto a baking sheet or a pan. Add half an onion and a few cloves of garlic to the pan and roast the vegetables at 425 degrees Fahrenheit until tender and completely cooked through. To check if the squash is ready, pierce it with the tip of a fork. The fork should slide in easily. When the squash is cool enough to handle, use a large spoon to scoop the flesh into a blender. Add the onion and garlic, full-fat coconut milk, ginger, lime juice, maple syrup, vegetable broth, and salt. Just like with all the other soups, blend on high until completely smooth. To serve, you can swirl some coconut milk into the soup, top the soup with red pepper flakes for some heat, or use the toasted seeds. I didn't have the seeds ready for serving the soups, but this is what they look like after roasting. And that's it, 5 quick and easy blender soups. I make a lot of blended soups because they are really easy to make. They are full of vegetables, at least the ones that I make, and our kids really like them. Now, as you saw in the video, I make a variety of blended soups just because everybody in the family has their favorite. Now, Tanner, which one is your favorite?
This one, tomato soup. It's the most familiar, and I won't rank these from like best to worst. Familiar to least familiar. So what I eat the most to what I eat the least. This one, I definitely eat the most of. I love tomatoes. You should know that about me if you're watching any of your taste tests. They're usually a hit if it's a taste test with tomatoes in it. This particular dish has a caramelized tomato flavor, which is a smoky, sweet flavor. And then the aftertaste is really, it's got a very long tail. Like it lingers for a long time, which I really like. So even as I'm speaking to you right now, I'm tasting tomato soup and that caramelized tomato, really good. I think that helps too. Like when you're able to enjoy the soup more, you eat less, like you can slow down and enjoy it. So that's really good. That's why I really like tomato soups. I find them to have a nice lingering aftertaste. It slows me down and I eat really fast. So that's good. The next soup would be the cream of broccoli. Yes, cream of broccoli, because it has nostalgia value to me. It's got a lot of sentimental value. My grandmother made me this soup, the first Vitamix meal I ever had. I was so impressed that a blender could make soup and then make it hot at the same time. Like it was steaming when it came out. I was like, wow, as 20 some years ago as a kid, I was like, that's impressive. And we still have that blender today, which is also impressive. The soup itself though is, it's a mild earthy flavor with a sweet complementary flavor. Maybe like it's underneath the vegetable earthy flavor, and it's from the cashew. So the broccoli and the cashew, they pair up really well. But they blend together really well. Like it's not like a complex flavor. It's like, okay, this is really interesting to eat, but you can definitely tell that they're both there at the same time across the palate. And the cashews lend a certain like heaviness to it, which makes it like very satiating to eat, because I think it's the fat content. So it makes you feel like you're eating something, and it makes me feel healthy too because it's green. So yeah, psychologically it makes me feel better. Then we have the cream of mushroom soup, which has cauliflower in it, but I can't detect it. So it gives it a certain amount of mass, but it's not as heavy as the cream of broccoli soup. So you also feel like you're eating something, but you probably could eat more of this, or at least I could eat more of this than I could of the cream of broccoli before I was full. It is in a sweet spot because I would associate this with almost like a gravy flavor. The mushrooms have an umami flavor, which is savory. Normally gravy, though, in my opinion, is quite salty. Like you usually put it on something to complement something. And you have to be careful of how much salt is in the gravy and how much you're eating. Like you can't just eat straight gravy. Maybe you could, but I think I would have to like rehydrate after that. It is in a sweet spot where you can eat lots of it and it doesn't feel like you're parched. So it's a really good dish. However, it is pervasive on the palate. In the aftertaste, it just keeps going. So if you put this on something like gravy, like if you're using it like a gravy, I know that it's popular to put a cream of mushroom soup on top of certain dishes. You could do that, but you have to understand that this tastes good and it will make everything else taste like it. So everything else will taste good, in my opinion, but it is not neutral. So just keep that in mind. The next dish is the the cauliflower.
Cream of cauliflower, sure.
Okay. You can definitely taste the roasted cauliflower in this one. But the first time that I had it, the coriander and the roasted cauliflower, I thought chicken. Like it tastes like chicken. So that's always the joke. It tastes like chicken. And honestly, it does in this case. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm associating the coriander with like a chicken glaze that I've had before, but it's definitely there. Its aftertaste drops off really quickly. So it's like this chicken meaty flavor, and then it drops off. So you have to eat it quite fast to keep that going. But the roasted cauliflower is definitely present as well. Finally, but not least, is the butternut squash soup. It has the most complex flavor out of any of these. The ginger and the butternuts, like the squash itself, are vying for attention on my palate. It's almost like it goes through waves. It's like, okay, ginger, butternut squash, ginger, butternut squash. So very complex to eat. And then on top of that complexity is the aftertaste. It is a very refreshing aftertaste. It's airy. It's got a certain levity to it. It's very light. So that must be from the butternut squash. It must be. I don't know where else it would come from. So it's got a certain airiness to it afterwards. It's very refreshing to eat.
There's also coconut milk.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And then normally I like it a little bit spicier, but in this case we've left it not as spicy for the kids.
Yes.
So
exactly.
I'm surprised that I am enjoying it so much because I like it to have a certain bite from the ginger and some like pepper in there normally. So I'm really impressed with this one. It's the most complex. It's probably the most interesting to eat. So it's last but not least.
Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, comment below, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.